page has more credibility than you do. I could spend the rest of the day reading your quotes where you make allegations against people and you can't defend them. Professor Painter, on May 5th of this year, you put out a tweet. You said, I'm going to quote, "There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's the Supreme Court." Would you tell me which members of the Supreme Court you believe are bought?
I was particularly concerned at that point when I posted that tweet.
I understand, but if you could, I've got really limited time, and I apologize for interrupting. Just tell me which members of the court you are bought.
I did not think that Justice Clarence Thomas should be failing to disclose his trips on a billionaire's yacht and airplane.
Do you think he's bought?
I believe that there is grave risk.
Do you think he's bought?
I said there is grave risk.
Do you think he's bought?
To the confidence of the American people in our Supreme Court.
Well, if you don't think he's bought, why did you say it?
I said
yes, you said members of the Supreme Court are bought. You're here testifying as an expert for my Democratic friends, and you're saying the members of the Supreme Court are bought?
I said when the American people feel that way, when we have Supreme Court justices
feel that way?
On yachts and in planes of billionaires and not being disclosed.
Anybody besides Justice Thomas you think is bought on the Supreme Court?
I believe that the court needs to clean
Anybody
up
besides
its
Justice
act.
Thomas?
I'm not going to go through each
I mean,
justice.
you tweeted it.
I tweeted the way the American people feel.
Did you mean it when you tweeted it?
And I stand by that tweet. This Supreme Court of the United States needs to clean up its
Let me
act.
ask you a couple others here, because you've on September 17, 2020, you tweeted, "It looks like Putin's favorite senator could lose," referring to Senator Lindsey Graham. Could you tell me your evidence for saying that Senator Graham is President Putin's favorite senator?
I don't recall that tweet and the story.
Well, I've got it. It's
tweeted
right
out.
here. It's right here.
I'm happy to look at the tweet, and I'm happy to write you, explain that. I don't know what that has to do with climate change.
Well, it has to do with your credibility. Did you say, what is your basis for saying that Senator Graham is President Putin's? I mean, have you ever talked to President Putin?
I have not talked to President Putin, and I would be happy to go look at the tweet and look at the story that I tweeted out and what Senator Graham had said in that context. You know, this is something
you say all this stuff. For example, you're here as an expert for my Democratic friends, and you say all this stuff. You called on September 16, 2023, a professor at the University of Chicago, very distinguished professor, Brian Leiter. You called him a racist. Can you explain to me why you think he's a racist?
I remember a series of tweets with him. He's a Marxist who put out a number of statements attacking African Americans and women. And he also was raising money for someone who had called the police on a black student for sleeping in the common room, and now has a wokekkk.com website attacking me.
That's fair enough.
So
fair enough.
I will just say one thing that I learned in high school debate, that when you have no argument, you simply change the subject.
All right. On October 15th of 2020, you said Lindsey Graham is soliciting cash payments in return for voting on a Supreme Court nomination. What evidence, that's a pretty bold statement, Professor. What evidence do you have for alleging that Senator Graham was taking cash in return for one of his votes?
I don't recall that specific tweet,
here it
but
is,
I
right
do.
Here it is.
I do recall. And
do you think he was taking cash for one of his votes?
I have received campaign.
Do you think he was taking cash for one of his votes?
I'm answering your question, Senator. I have received solicitations from both political parties.
Do you think Lindsey Graham was
confirmation
taking
hearings for
cash for
justice.
one of his votes? It's a simple question,
I am
Professor.
received cash, solicitations for cash on my email. And yes, from both political parties in connection with Supreme Court confirmation votes.
Well, I'm out of
It's
time,
wrong.
but let me just say for the record,
It's wrong.
my aunt's Facebook page has more credibility than you do. I could spend the rest of the day reading your quotes where you make allegations against people and you can't defend them.
You've said nothing about climate change. You quoted everybody from a Marxist
Senator
to
Kaine.
all sorts of other people. This has absolutely nothing to do with the topic of the hearing, Senator.
Judge, congratulations.
Thank you.
I want to try to understand the facts on some of these cases.
Yes, sir.
The Albertus Lewis case. He shot his girlfriend in the head. Is that correct?
Senator, as I stated, I'm not sure if you were in here earlier, that case is still pending. He's not been convicted of any of those charges. And so I have to be really careful in how I frame my
Did he
question.
shoot his girlfriend in the head?
Senator, based on, those are the allegations of the charge, yes.
So you're saying he didn't shoot his girlfriend in the head?
He has not been convicted of anything, is my understanding. And I know it's a very old case, it's 2017.
Well, when you
but
granted him bond, did you think he had shot his girlfriend in the head? He was charged with shooting his girlfriend in the head, wasn't he?
Thank you, Senator.
You're welcome.
Those are the allegations. When he initially appeared before me,
Okay.
I denied his bond based on everything.
Let me
that was
start
before
over, okay? Mr. Lewis was charged and arrested, so presumably there was probable cause, with shooting his girlfriend in the head and putting her body in a wheelchair and dumping her outside the hospital. Those were the allegations. Is that right?
I believe those were the allegations, yes, sir.
Okay. And you gave Mr. Lewis bond. Is that right?
No, that's incorrect, Senator. I denied his bond. When he appeared before me in July of 2017.
So you didn't give him bond? He didn't release him?
I denied his bond. It was 2
Did
years
you ultimately
late.
release him?
2 years later, after the state violated the
Did you
court's
grant
order.
his bond? I'm just trying to understand the facts.
Yes, sir. 2 years later, after
You
the
granted
state.
his bond.
When he initially appeared before me, I denied the bond. It was 2 years after
Okay.
that I granted a bond.
You did grant the bond.
After the violation by the
Right.
state of the court order to try his case and discovery rules.
And then he went out and tried to kill 2 sheriff's deputies while using a baby as a human shield, allegedly. Is that right?
Those are the allegations in the other case, yes.
Okay. Would he been able to do that if you hadn't let him go?
Thank you, Senator.
You're welcome.
When he appeared before me, I denied his bond. He appeared before me again, at which point
And you let him go?
the state violated the order of the court.
But I'm just
And I
trying to
said a
understand the facts.
sufficiently
You
high
let him
bond.
go. If you hadn't have let him go, then he could not have tried to kill 2 sheriff's deputies using a baby, a child, as a human shield. Factually, is that correct?
I'm not sure, Senator.
Oh, I think you are. Let me ask you about Kelly Honeywell. You remember that name?
Senator, I did not have any involvement in that actual case, but I am familiar with what you're referring to.
Okay. You remember Troy Stevenson?
Yes.
All right. Troy Stevenson was arrested, allegedly, for shooting Kelly Honeywell, killing her, murdering her at a bakery. Mr. Honeywell was arrested. And Mr. Honeywell allegedly was a member of a gang. He owned guns and he did drugs. Okay? You granted Mr. Stevenson bail. Is that right?
In that case, I did not set bail bond in that case when he was charged with murder.
You didn't let him go?
Not on the, I did not set the bond on the murder charge.
Who did?
I don't know who's, one
Then
of
how
my
did he
colleagues.
get out of jail?
Are you asking about the murder charge?
What I'm asking, and I think you know what I'm asking, Mr. Stevenson allegedly was arrested for shooting this bakery worker in the head, and he was granted bail. He was let out. You didn't grant the bail?
No, sir.
Who did?
He